Okay, well, welcome. I'm glad it's Friday. I'm glad that I was asked to do this. I'm excited about doing it. Um, I thought I would start out talking a little bit about my career path, since it's been kind of an interesting career path, and then why I decided to become a dietitian, or why I wanted to. Um, it's fun to look back on that, actually. So I wanted to become a dietitian because I like food. I'm a dietitian that actually likes food. And I worked in a hospital kitchen in high school. And in that hospital kitchen, of course, there were dietitians, but there were also cooks. And I don't know if we really had chefs then, trained chefs. But I really liked working in the hospital environment, so much so that I thought I might want to go to college to become a nurse. So this was when I was in high school. And then I found out you could become a dietitian, and to me that was kind of a good meld of loving food and kind of liking medicine and health. So I went to Iowa State University, go Cyclones, and I majored in institution management, which is kind of a combination of nutrition and dietetics. You fulfill all the requirements to be a registered dietitian, but it has a lot more of a management bent, and it had 3 sub areas: hotel and restaurant management, I think college and university food service management, and school food service management. And at the time, I thought I wanted to do school food service or hotel and restaurant. So I kind of went back and forth between the 2 areas when I was in college, but I ended up getting my degree in school food service, which I've never actually worked at a school food service, except for NC State, which would be colleges. So initially I was in a coordinated undergraduate program, which we used to have back then, where you could actually complete your degree and do your internship in 4 years. And it was really hard to get into that program, and I got into the program. But as I got closer to graduation, I dropped out of it because I thought I didn't really want to be a dietitian. At that point, I thought I really want to go into more hospitality and hotel and restaurant, and some of the shine about being a dietitian had kind of worn off. So I actually dropped out when I was almost finished with my internship, which I've had to live with that decision for a while. But I think it was actually fine. So I graduated. I worked kind of in school food service in the summer food program for a while. And I'd gotten married in college. And I had some children, 2 wonderful children. And I actually didn't work for 7 years. And a lot of younger dietitians just gasp, you took 7 years off? Yeah, I took 7 years off, and it was really good. I think it made me a better dietitian. So after those 7 years, remember, I still haven't completed my internship. I decide, well, maybe I want to do an internship. So this is before there was such a thing as the internet. So I just called around and I found an internship at UNC Greensboro. Meanwhile, I'd moved to North Carolina. So UNC Greensboro accepted me into their internship, and it was 9 years after I graduated from college. There was a 10-year recency requirement then, so it was really, I got in under the wire. And I really enjoyed my internship, really enjoyed every aspect of it, because I had a lot of life experience by the time I did my internship. I was much more mature. I think I knew more what I wanted to do. And so it was a really good experience for me. So my first job out of the internship was a cardiac rehab job. And cardiac rehab is where you work with clients, which are patients from the hospital, that have just had open heart surgery, usually, or a major cardiac event. And I worked in that area for 2 years, part-time. And the cool thing about cardiac rehab is it's really early in the morning. Back then it was very early in the morning, because this is in the early 90s. It was mostly men, and they had jobs. So it was like 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m. were cardiac rehab times, and they would come before work to exercise and learn about healthy diet and talk to a counselor and all the different components of cardiac rehab. The special part about that was every cardiac rehab session had a physician that had to come to it, and all the physicians that wanted privileges at Rex Hospital, which is a larger hospital here in the Raleigh area, they had to work one cardiac rehab session a month. So basically, they were the physician that was there in case there was a major event, which there were some. So they were there, very useful, and they would usually exercise with the patients. And so would the dietitian and the therapist and the nurse and the pharmacist and other people on our team. And we just walk the track or talk to them about different things while they were on the treadmill or the bike or whatever they were doing. It was a great, great first job because I got to find out all sorts of things about the different parts of cardiac rehab. I really got well versed in cardiovascular disease, which helped me later when I was a diabetes educator. And the special sauce of the whole thing was I met about 50 physicians, and they knew me on a first name basis. And after a while, a few of them came to me and said, I think you should go into private practice. You're not getting paid very well here, which I wasn't. And I think you can make more money in private practice. And about 6 or 7 of them told me that they would refer their patients to me. So being a very, very naive woman, I went home and decided to start a private practice. That's about how much thought I gave it. And I ended up being very successful in that by the grace of God. But I went home and I decided to call up the major insurers in the area and see if I could become a provider. Because I knew that insurance coverage was kind of hard back then. I was very active in licensure in North Carolina. And I thought, well, if you're a licensed healthcare provider, why couldn't you provide services for an insurance company and get reimbursed? So I called the 3 major insurers, and I didn't know that that was ridiculous, and I should have never done that. But this was so long ago, I called them on my wall phone, so it was old-fashioned times. And I called whoever was in charge, and then I asked them, and all 3 insurance companies accepted me. So I was the only provider for the 3 biggest insurers in my area, which gives you a lot of patience right away. Because, they look up, do we have a dietitian? Oh, yeah, we have this one. So I saw a lot of people, and it was a really, really thriving practice for many years. After a while, I got kind of tired of just seeing patients. Because it's not, you see patients all day, which is fun, but it's a lot of the same thing. So I thought, what would make my job better? I hated scheduling appointments, and I hated filing insurance. So I went to my 3 biggest referrers and asked them if I could just come into their office, they could schedule the patients and file the insurance and just pay me a rate, a really nice rate actually, but they could charge what they wanted for it. These were the olden days. So I did. I gave up my office, and I would go to these 3 big practices every week, and that left me some extra time. At the time, I was the chair of the state licensing board, so I was doing that somewhat. And North Carolina State called the licensing board and asked them, who's a good dietitian? Well, I had a great secretary of the license board, and she said, well, Lisa Eberhart's a great dietitian. So NC State called me and said, can you just come in for 2 weeks and help us? We've lost our dietitian, and we have a contractual obligation to have a dietitian here on campus, and just come for a few weeks and see a few people. Well, long story short, it turned into a 20-year career, and I loved working for NC State. I had kind of it's a luxury. I had a luxury that no one had really been in the position that they put me in. They always had a dietitian that helped run one of the dining halls, but I was just seeing students. So I saw students at student health, I saw students in athletics, I saw students that had problems with their meal plan, I saw students with allergies, and nobody had really done the job before, so I kind of built it how I wanted to build it. So I had these 3 practices that I went to 2.5 days a week, and then I had a few more days a week that I could devote to North Carolina State. And slowly over time, I started seeing more and more students, getting more and more involved with athletics, getting more involved with students that had diabetes, having more involvement about what was on the menu in order to make sure that students with special dietary needs could eat in our food service, which is a passion of mine. I'll talk about it in a minute. And I did some speaking on the side, but mostly that's what I did. And I started turning NC State into I became more of an important part of what was happening at NC State. I was the only dietitian at student health. I was the only dietitian in athletics. I was the only dietitian working for dining. So it makes you like a dietitian the only dietitian in a small town, because we probably had 3,500 students and other people on campus. So it was kind of a challenging job. And one of the things I did to try to make the job less challenging was someone reached out to me and asked me if I would precept a dietetic intern, and I said sure. And the first one I had was stellar. And I thought, wow, this is a great way to stretch me. I could help these young women and men get some experience, and also we could do so many more things if you have more people doing it. So it started to get really busy at NC State, and I decided one day to give up my private practice and focus completely on NC State. Luckily, I'd had quite a few years to think about what I wanted to do at NC State and what my goals were. So my goals were, first, to make NC State the most transparent and healthiest campus in the nation. And by transparent, I meant a lot of my time was spent looking up things that people couldn't eat. You know, if someone comes in and says, I can't eat pistachios, which of the menu items on campus has pistachios in it? Well, that involved, back then, going into a freezer or wherever food was stored and ripping off the label off the box. Many times it didn't have the ingredients, but it did have the company. Running down the company, calling them up, trying to find out what was in the product. And that was very problematic. So I wanted NC State to be transparent somehow. And then I wanted to elevate dining. By then I really had a love of North Carolina State dining. I knew there were a lot of good people working there, trying as hard as they could to be the best possible food service. And then I wanted to meet the needs of students with special dietary needs, and transparency kind of goes into that. You know, if everything's transparent and they can access that themselves, they can make sure that they're eating what they need, and that gives them autonomy. You know, they don't have to call a dietitian every time they want to eat at a dining hall and ask, is there pistachios in this? So those are my goals, and I did achieve all those goals. The dietetic interns were part of me achieving that goal. So when I wanted to make NC State transparent, I had to go into our software and figure out how to make sure that all the ingredient lists and all the recipes were correct, and figure out a way to make all that work so that students could see it in different ways on campus. It worked so well that NC State is one of the leading schools in the nation for transparency. I think it's one of the most transparent schools in the nation. There's nowhere you can go on campus that you can't touch a mobile app or a touch screen or look at a menu board or get on their website and not find out everything that's in every menu item at every venue. At least that's how it was when I left. But the other thing is we increased students' satisfaction with meals a lot. I worked with the chefs, and the whole team worked together to develop more delicious, healthier meals. And during that time period where I started working full-time for NC State, we went from 1 or 2 trained chefs to 24 or more trained chefs. So there were a lot of trained chefs. And I worked extensively with the chefs on cooking demonstrations and meals, menu development. And I had the opportunity to hire a research and development chef that was also a trained dietitian, so a registered dietitian. So I could have that sweet spot of a registered dietitian and a chef helping me do R&D, helping the whole team do R&D for menus and menu development. And I made sure that everybody that I hired around me, and every student and intern that I had assistants too. I had a couple of assistants. None of them were dietitians. I just always surrounded myself with people that had a skill set that was different than my skill set. I don't have any technology prowess at all, but I think that making sure that you look for people that have some of those skills. Like I had some people around me that were really good at social media, or really good at training, or really good at developing menus. And I tried to make my staff be very varied and diverse, and so that we could be a better group overall. So during this time at NC State, NC State became known for their menu transparency, and companies would call me to speak about menu transparencies, and these were companies for other non-commercial food services or companies that had restaurants, and they just wanted to be more transparent. They could see the writing on the wall that people were going to demand food transparency. And so I started a business on the side called Menu Analytics. The director of hospitality services at NC State did it with me. This is one of those surround your people that have a different skill set. So he had a skill set of business and a skill set of technology. And I needed a business technology person to go into business with me because those are not my strong suits. And so we went into business together, thinking we would just do that on the side for a little while, maybe after we retired. But it got bigger and bigger. And our major clients are restaurants. So in December of 2019, I retired. And in February of 2020, my business partner, Randy Lait, retired. And so we really hit the ground running in February, end of February, early March. So think back, March 2020, what happened then? And it was the global pandemic. And we both thought, oh my goodness, we have started a business working with restaurants exactly at the wrong time. But as it turns out, it was exactly the right time. Things have been hard for restaurants, but we've kept busy. And some restaurants have gone by the wayside, others have developed. Everyone understands that transparency is important. Everyone's really concerned about allergies and the veto factor of people that want to eat in your restaurant not being able to eat there because you don't know what's in the food. All the same obstacles we had at NC State with food happen in restaurants and other non-commercial food services. We don't just work with restaurants, but mostly we do that. And NC State helped me go on that path. So I'm going to look down here and see if there's any more questions. And I don't really see any questions on here. So I will go with the questions that I have now. So that's what I do now. My work at NC State helped me get on a path for what I do now. And transparency is what's helped me do that. And these are questions that have already been given to me. How would I advise people that wanted to do something similar to what I am doing? Oh, I would advise people to really look at their skill set and look for experiences that they can get that will help them move towards whatever it is they want to do. If they want to move towards something that, like I'm doing, I think they need to work with some culinary staff, think about food and food production and what that takes. Start understanding labeling laws, take a deep dive into labels and what's required, have a really good understanding of allergies and the challenges that people with allergies face when they go out to eat or eat at a university food service or even eat at their company's cafeteria. Making sure that you have a really good idea about that. And if you want to start a business, I would be a lot more careful than Lisa Eberhart has ever been with starting a business. I remember I told you I started my other business with very little thought about, how I was going to build that business and what would make it successful. I just saw a lot of patients. And if you see a lot of patients and you're only one person and you don't have a lot of overhead, you can probably make that work. But my husband, who is a good businessman, always told me that you're never going to grow this business or scale this business unless you let other people see your patients so that you can have more than one person seeing patients every hour, because the maximum you can make is what you can charge for the number of hours a day that you can actually stay awake. So I never really got that. I do get it now. Once I got to NC State, I started understanding that to really do a good job, you have to take other people under your wing and train them and shepherd them towards your goals. And that's what interns and other undergraduate assistants and graduate assistants did for me is they helped expand what I could do, really expand my reach. Like, you can't be everywhere all day, and if you have 26 venues on campus that you are the nutrition person in charge of, there's no way you can be at all these places all day, every day. So you absolutely need more people. And students, I realize, like to talk to other students more than they like to talk to dietitians. So that's, I'll make sure, okay. So I have a few questions. Congratulations, Susan. Susan wrote in that she went back to school to get her RD, and she's 60 years old. Well, it's never too late. I think a 60-year-old person has a certain amount of experience in life that is going to put you above people that are 20 years old. I use a specific nutrient analysis software. I've used a couple different ones. Oh, it's definitely allowed for me to say. I used some lower cost nutrition analysis software, but I eventually went to ESHA Genesis, which is kind of the gold standard for restaurants. It is expensive, but very much worth it. But I can use almost any software. There was software that was associated with Seaboard, which was what we had at NC State. I've also used software with a really cool company called Galley that connects the item at the item level, and then it brings it up through the recipe. Just like any nutrient analysis software, it needs to link to the level of the food, and then when you combine those foods into recipes, it'll give you the analysis and the allergens. All right. It must be difficult to keep up with menus and allergies because my fear is always that the cook and chef may substitute. That's a really legitimate fear, Noreen. I think the fear is, well, maybe not a fear. I think you should think of it as a challenge. And the challenge is there, but making sure that the training is there. So cooks and chefs understanding that this all works together, and the little changes they make impact things all the way down the line. And it's not just cooks and chefs that may substitute. With this supply chain issue that we have now, you could just get a completely different product. And so you need to make really good friends with your supply chain. Whoever's receiving your food, you need to say, hey, if there's any changes, if anything's different, make sure you tell me. And just be there all the time and talk to people all the time, and make sure that they understand that your job depends on keeping people safe. Also, as far as precepting, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more if I have time. I might not have time. Have you ever had people who present a really long list of food allergies and sensitivities that you find suspect, and what do you or the facility do about it? I always honor whatever people say their allergies are. I do ask them to go through, when I was at NC State, to go through disability services, and sometimes those get, that's part of a student health service generally in most universities, and some things get kind of vetted out. But I'm very respectful of people that give me a long list of food sensitivities and allergies, and if you have complete transparency of your menu, it's on them. So they can look at the complete ingredient list and decide whether or not they're going to eat those foods. I rarely had to let anyone off the meal plan for that because we were transparent. You could see what you could eat on campus. If they had so many allergies that they really couldn't eat on campus, that was a problem. One of the things that was a problem at NC State, which we fixed, was halal. We didn't mark our foods for halal, and religious observance is just as important as a physical problem with allergens. So if you have people that can't eat on campus because they don't know what's in the food, and they don't know whether they can't decipher whether or not it's halal, because halal meats have to be slaughtered in a certain way, and we fixed that problem, and it was really helpful. I know there's a lot of dietitians out there that work for universities that, unless people can bring a note from their doctor, they're not going to accommodate them. But I have the opinion that we accommodate vegans, and it's not, or any type of dietary. In a university, we accommodate all sorts of dietary needs. And just because you have a lot of them doesn't mean I'm going to discount that at all. The software for analyzing recipes for food products, I think you should still use estrogenesis. And that it generates labels. Estrogenesis is right now the gold standard. The biggest challenges and issues for food services and menus is trying to keep them accurate, making sure that what's being on the menu is actually being served, and what's being served, the people produced it according to the recipe and using the products that you've analyzed. I think that's the biggest challenge. And all of that is training, making sure that everyone's on the same team. I felt really good about NC State in the way that we tried to develop a team atmosphere, especially with chefs. There's this idea that dietitians and chefs can't get along. Oh my gosh, dietitians and chefs really have the same goal. Beautiful, delicious food that people want to eat. And aligning with the chefs is a really important part of being a dietitian, and understanding where they're coming from, because they want to make beautiful, delicious food. And if we put so many constraints on them that their food can't be beautiful and delicious, then we're just harming ourselves, because we want people to eat beautiful and delicious food. We want to consume beautiful and delicious food, and chefs want to produce beautiful and delicious food. And once you realize that you're really all on the same page, it's really helpful. We only have a few minutes left, and I do want to talk about something that is extremely important to me. It's a passion of mine, and that is mentorship. And I think that the best experiences I've had in my life have been working with students and other people that have just come to work with and for me. They give me the best ideas, the most interesting backgrounds. Back to the halal, I actually hired some students that were Muslim that actually consumed a halal diet to help me mark things on my menu and vet recipes and look at it from their perspective. And I think that is so valuable. And I learned so much from them, and I'm sure they learned a lot working in our area. So I think mentorship should be part of what dietitians do. Everyone has to do a dietetic internship. And if you're not taking advantage of that fact, wherever you're working, and using dietetic interns to enhance what you do, and also to give them the best possible experience. We're only going to get really good dietitians if they have really good internships, and they're only going to have really good internships if they have really good mentors. And so I think I always felt like it was my responsibility to take as many interns as I could every year and try to get as diverse of a group of interns as possible from different universities, from historically black colleges, from small private universities, from big universities, all sorts of people. I had interns that had like 30 years of experience in food service and should have been, and really were mentoring me. And I had 2 interns that were getting their PhDs at the same time. So there's one already had her PhD. So super intelligent. They really helped me develop some of those skills, not the intelligence skill, but certain skills that I didn't have. And then also I had students that came from privileged backgrounds, less than privileged backgrounds. I had one from Belarus, which was lovely. And so you get a lot of good information, and it enhances the way you're a dietitian. And every dietitian, if there's dietitians listening here on this that have been dietitians for a while, you kind of lose your zest for nutrition. But every time an intern walks in your office, that zest comes with them, and it's contagious. And you just want to be the best example to them, and they want, usually 99% of the time, they want to do a really good job. And that combination, you can't even buy that. So I'm really a proponent of that, and I think you can benefit very much from making sure that that you take on students or other people as mentors, or that you're a mentee. So if you don't have time to precept students or be a mentor, go find somebody that can mentor you. because I think that growing in your job is the most important part. And if you really want to build up dietitians, you got to make sure that you mentor, you're a mentee, and that the whole profession grows. And I'm really passionate about that. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that today. I think we're just about out of time unless there's more questions. Let me see if there's any more. Did you get dietetic interns who are going to school at NC State? I took dietetic interns that had gone to NC State, but NC State doesn't have an internship program. So most of my interns were from everywhere. I made sure I took one distance learning intern every year because they are challenged to find spots. And then I took some from every school in North Carolina and some schools in Michigan and some schools in South Carolina. Oh, don't forget my social media. Okay, so I'm not that great on social media. You can follow Menu Analytics. That's my company. So Menu Analytics on LinkedIn. We have a Facebook page. We have a website, menuanalytics.com. If you want to email me, it's lisa@menuanalytics.com. And I'd love to link in with you. So link in with me on LinkedIn. Mostly I do LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIn's a great way to watch what's happening in the industry and make sure that you know what people are up to. And it helps you to find, get some ideas of jobs you could do or things that other people are doing that they're doing in a really excellent way. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Hope you guys are going to have a great Friday. Thanks.